So I'm very excited to be here with you today. My name is Kevin Smith, and I'm a Senior Director Analyst at Gartner. I sit in the Business and Technology Insights group. And as an added bonus, I also, for the past year and a half, have been part of Gartner's Executive Fast Start program, which is our expanded research specifically to new-to-role leaders in the organization. And I also am in the cohort for change. So this is all my worlds coming together at once, and so I'm excited to be talking to you today about the pitfalls for new CIOs. Now, I want to start off first by congratulating anybody in the room that has just become or that is about to become a new CIO or a technology leader of any kind. Why don't you give your peers a round of applause since everybody's taken a new step. That's a big thing in your career. Congratulations. So I want to start off actually by acknowledging the complexity of your role and really making sure that you know what you're stepping into on day one if you've not already done so. In the research that we've done over the past couple of years in the evolution of the CIO, the role continues to get more and more complex. So only about 20% of CIOs anymore are really just focused specifically on the IT function itself. More than half of CIOs are actually working to digitalize the organization, to try to get technology into the hands of the people that are closest to value creation. About 18% of CIOs are actually managing functional units outside of IT, in addition to IT itself. And then you can see that 10% of CIOs, on average, actually have growth initiatives in the organization that contribute to profit and loss. The fact of the matter is the world is becoming more driven by technology, and so the role of the CIO is very, very critical in today's organization, and this actually reflects that. Now let's go a little bit deeper into that first week. So when you arrive in your new role, if you've not already, you are going to be expected to address some things right off the bat. Specifically, the organization is going to be looking to you to quickly get up to speed on the digital transformations that are taking place in the organization. And they're also going to be looking at what can we do from a core systems upgrade standpoint. We've taken a lot of inquiry calls this year specifically on ERP system upgrades and installations. And so we know that that's going to be top of mind right when you get into your new role. Now, with that said, that happening early on in your tenure, we also know that our most successful new-to-role CIOs actually prioritize understanding the longer-term technology roadmap in the organization. And so what that means is you have to think short-term, but you also need to think long-term. Similar to that, you're going to be expected to reevaluate your long-term strategic plan and the initiatives that comprise that plan over not only your first year, but also beyond. But then you're also going to be expected to look more tactically and maybe evaluating potential solution providers, maybe what's your current cost mix, what is your current budget spend. So you're going to have to actually think strategically, and you're going to have to think tactically. The executives in your organization are going to be looking to the IT group as a whole to take on more change than they've ever taken on before, and they're going to look to you, the CIO, to accelerate that change. So you can see, as we start to look at the things that are actually driving the role of a new technology leader in an organization, it's a bit of a paradox. You've got to move fast, and you have to think long-term as well. You're going to be expected to control costs, but at the same time, your organization is going to be looking to you to responsibly invest in innovation. And of course, that's going to include, obviously, the adoption of AI, but they're going to want you to do it in such an efficient way that it achieves the ROI that's intended, the productivity that's intended, and you're going to be required to escape some of that theater. If you attended the keynote this morning, you probably saw that 95% of AI pilots right now are actually failing. We don't want you to be those people. So just know actually what you're walking into, because you're living in a world of paradoxes. Now, the research that we've done specific to new-to-role executives tells us that the number one priority that new executives have when they go into the new role is to be able to execute on change. And that's why we're here today. But the change is going to be different for each of you that is taking a role as a new technology leader in your organization. And let me show you how quickly. By a show of hands, I'd like to know who in the room here is going to be a brand new CIO for the very first time ever. Okay, of my brand new CIOs, how many of you are also going to be in a new industry? You're all staying in your industry. Okay, now raise a hand of who are my experienced CIOs that are going to be a new CIO? No experienced CIOs at all. Okay, oftentimes experienced CIOs will stay in their own industry, but we're also seeing them go out of industry more and into other companies as well. We also start to see that a lot of times we will see CIOs go from the public sector to the private sector or vice versa, and we're seeing CIOs go from large enterprise into startups and vice versa. And so the reason why I want to point that out is to understand that each of your transitions is going to be very, very unique and specific when you take a new role in an organization. That, combined with the paradoxical nature of your role, has you navigating a very tricky landscape. For my new CIOs, are you still up for the task? I don't want to scare you away by giving you all this. I want to give you a good lay of the land. But let me start off with some good news. How about this? Traditionally, you would have been expected to come to your role and you would have been expected to get up to speed on everything that I just took you through in the first 90 to 100 days. There's a really great business book called The First 90 Days. And I, 2 years ago, wrote the CIO's First 100 Days note for Gartner. And so if you read that, I hope it helped. I apologize for the length and the complexity of it. We were trying to get a lot done with one research note. As we've evolved our research into new to role executives, we've expanded that and we've formalized it in Gartner over the past 2 years. We no longer subscribe to the 100-day assumption anymore. There's changes that are simply too complex and you're being disrupted every day. And we know that it actually takes about 9 months for an executive to get up to speed in their new role. And in your first year, not only are you going to be going after early ones, but you're also going to be laying the foundation for longer term transformation. And so the way that we're assembling our research now for new to role executives is to look across that whole first year. We're going to give you a break and we're going to give you at least a first year. We're not going to hold you to that original 90 days. And like I said, change is the number one focus of new to role executives, and that's what we were here to talk about today. We're going to talk about the pitfalls that you might actually encounter when it comes to change. Now, there are 3 key pitfalls that we're seeing pop up over and over again in that landscape, if you will, of new to role leaders. The first one is the experience override. This is where you are relying solely on the experience from your past role and not necessarily doing your due diligence about your new role. We've seen some CIOs do that. The second pitfall is the political downplay. This is you making the mistake of not taking the time to understand the political landscape in your organization and the power dynamics in the organization. And then the third pitfall is the ambition distraction. And this specifically is when you pursue quick wins, is not taking the time to scrutinize them at a deeper level so that they have a good return on your efforts and they also have a good return for the organization as well. Now, when we go through these pitfalls today, I want us to come at them from a different direction. If you were looking at a map, I keep talking about a landscape, and there were pitfalls on your map, oftentimes you would want to go around them. You would want to avoid them. That's not what we're going to do today. We're going to lean into these pitfalls. We're going to start to exercise a bit of growth mindset, right? So when you're hit with a disruption or a threat from a growth mindset perspective, you lean into it, and you find the room to innovate and actually turn it potentially into an opportunity. And that's how we have looked at the pitfalls that I'm taking you through today. We want to lean into the pitfalls and use them to shape how we're actually going to lead change in our new roles. When we do that, we're going to move from being risk averse to actually exercising some strategic mastery. And what ends up happening is we're going to be doing the research into our new role in a way where when we see friction points, they're actually going to be opportunities for us to drive change in how we need to in our organization. And we're going to be doing this proactively. So let's go ahead and look at the very first pitfall. This is the experience override. And this one is, again, it's about you relying on your past experience and not taking the time to listen to your new team and your new stakeholders, and also not doing your due diligence into why the organization is the way that it is once you arrive there. Now, there's a couple risks involved with this. The first one is that it puts you in a position of having blind spots when it comes to decision making. So if you're relying solely on your past environment and you come into a new environment and you don't do the due diligence to understand how it's different, you're going to be missing opportunities to lead, but more so, there might be things that were just very effectively taken care of in your past role that aren't in the new environment, and you're going to miss those. And nobody likes surprises at work. So that's one of the risks that actually comes with relying too much on your past experience. The other thing that it does is when you come into a new organization and you don't take the time to learn why things are the way that they are, this can actually be a little insulting. You can actually be alienating the key stakeholders that are going to be very, very important to you moving forward in the organization. And it's also discounting the work that even your own IT shop has done in the past. They've been coming to work every day, trying to do their best and adding value over the course of history. And even though you're coming in to change things, they want to be recognized for that actually going forward. So, what this one's really about is culture. And unfortunately, we see only about a third of our CIOs rank understanding an organization's jargon and unwritten rules or its culture as being something that's important. So I want you to not make that mistake going forward. And here's how you're going to actually do that. We want you to take some time and we want you to do some homework. We want you to perform a historical review in a lessons learned audit. So what is that? That's a systematic way in which you're going to go about learning why your organization is the way that it is today. So one of the things that you can look at is you can review past IT initiatives. You can understand why did they fail or why did they actually succeed. Are there any patterns to both the successes and failures that you might want to understand? And then if the organization has been doing them formally, you can also look at postmortems, not only for the same patterns that you might see there, but you also might discover some deeper things there. Are there some bigger systemic things going on in the organization culturally or politically that you might actually need to address to be able to drive change more as you take your new role? Now, I said earlier that I was part of Gartner's Executive Fast Start program. And again, that's our formalization into supporting new-to-role leaders. When we did this, we brought together our best analysts, and we scrutinized our own research. We did a significant amount of work with our executive partners, who are the ex-technology leaders that work for Gartner that now may be working with you on an ongoing basis. And we interviewed a lot of CIOs in the last 18 months to get really good insights into how we can actually meet the needs of new-to-role leaders better. And when we did this, they pointed out something interesting that our most successful CIOs were doing is they were conducting hotspot reviews. And as they started going and having discussions with the different stakeholders in the organization, they were keeping an ear out for things that might raise their eyebrow and cause them some concern. This is going to be a highly valuable target for you to pursue because there might be some things that just weren't talked about in the interview process as loudly or openly or as transparently as they should have been. And again, nobody likes surprises at work, and so this is a way that you can start to uncover some of those things that may not have made it to the front headlines as you were actually going through the interview process. You're going to want to make sure from an IT spend standpoint that you've done your due diligence there. You want to know where you're at in terms of what your cost is, and you can benchmark that against other organizations using Gartner tools. And then we would very strongly recommend you to also reach out to your stakeholders and see how satisfied were they in the past with IT spend. As they worked with your last predecessor, did they feel like they actually got their return on investment that they wanted to or not? Now, when you do this, you're going to get a great lay of the land. You're going to get insight into institutional knowledge. You're going to start to see who the power players are. You're going to start to understand why decisions are made the way that they are, what the dominant behaviors are actually in the system. And this is going to be able to help you as you go forward, as you start to drive your changes, because you're going to know what's already out there from a mindset standpoint. The other great thing is that when you do this, it puts you in the position of building relationships early on with your stakeholders and with the IT group, and that shows that you care. That shows that you do value what's been done in the past, and that you want to build off that going forward, and that you're not throwing everything out right when you came in, only relying things on the past. So this one really helps you understand what's urgent. It helps you be in a good position to talk to your stakeholder leaders if there needs to be some trade-offs to be made. You might have uncovered that there was a cybersecurity issue that wasn't as prominent when you were first coming in the door, and you might need to reprioritize that. Now you've got the background where you can actually have those discussions. It's also going to help you understand how much can the organization handle from a change standpoint, and how much can my IT shop handle from a change standpoint. That way you can minimize resistance, and you can also minimize change fatigue as you go forward. One of our CIOs said, learn the history and rationale behind existing processes, even if they seem illogical. Because I would venture to guess that as all of you have taken a new role, in your first couple of weeks you might have been driving home saying, how did the organization ever get to be like this? I can't believe this is going on. Well, now you've done your due diligence, so you can move forward in a very informed way. Okay, the second pitfall is the political downplay. This is understanding really how the allegiances and the rivalries and the unspoken rules of the organization have played out in terms of their ability to show you what the power dynamics are that are going on and the political landscape are in the organization. And if you don't take the time to really understand all that's going on under the surface and how the organization works, you will run into resistance, but you won't understand why or where it's coming from or who might actually be leading the resistance against you. Because as you come into an organization, until you've built really great relationships, there might be some people that aren't in support of IT, and they might be actually resisting some of the things that you're going to want to do. So you're going to want to do some due diligence to find out who they are and why. And if you come into the organization and you don't understand these dynamics that are going on, you're operating on an island. And you're never going to be able to accelerate the change that you want to, doing it all on your own. So how do you get around this? Again, I'm going to have you do some homework. I'm going to ask you to use one of our most popular stakeholder analysis tools. This one is called the Support and Influence tools. Those are our axes on the 2x2 here. It's a very simple tool. I will say, I want you doing this on a piece of paper or a napkin. I don't want you doing this on a dry erase board out in the open, and I don't want you doing it on a shared drive. This is for you to map your stakeholders politically where they're at, okay? We want everybody to be in the upper right and be a strong proponent ultimately, but not everybody's going to start there. You're going to have weak proponents when you first come in. They're going to be in support of IT, but they may not have a lot of influence. So you might be able to actually include them in some of your early projects, give them a little bit of that exposure to the rest of the organization so it increases their influence the next time around, moves them to the upper right. When you come to the organization and you start to drive change, you're going to have people in the bottom right that are weak opponents. So they may not support IT, but they also, for that specific change initiative, may not have a lot of influence. Now, you won't worry about them on that specific change initiative, but on the next change initiative, I want you to remap them again because they might have moved. Based on the change initiative, that stakeholder might have more influence now, and they might have moved to the bottom right. Our strong opponents are the ones that we want to spend most of our time on, and here's why. First of all, they are the ones that can derail your change plans. They've got a lot of influence in the organization for whatever reason. They may not understand the value that technology is bringing yet, or they don't like what your predecessor did. They're going to potentially cause you some friction. With that said, if you can work with a strong opponent and you can flip them into being an advocate, not only do you then have a strong proponent for life, but the rest of the organization saw that you actually did that, and that accelerates all your change with all your other stakeholders. It's a fantastic influencing ploy to flip an adversary into an advocate. And then when you do that, you would do that in the same way, similar that I talked to about the weak opponents, is you would figure out what is a project I can do in their specific functional unit, and how can I let them take all the credit for it? Let them be the co-leader on it with you, bring your technology to bear, but let them take all the credit for it. That's going to be great for your brand going forward. And the next time around, they're going to be a great proponent, and you'll be able to accelerate change in the organization. So this one is very important because it is having you really understand what are those rivalries and alliances. How do they actually play out? But more importantly, how can I actually work with them going forward? We do a survey every year called the CIO Agenda. Many of you probably read that. In the past couple of years, we've also been balancing the CIO agenda and doing a survey with CXOs. And for the past couple of years, we've gotten some fantastic insights into the relationship between the CIO and the CXOs in terms of performance based on how much they actually collaborate. When a CXO collaborates with a CIO more than twice a month, that CXO actually experiences or meets or exceeds their expectations on technology investment 71% of the time. It's almost twice as much than the CXOs that are only collaborating with you quarterly. And it's due to a whole host of reasons. One, that CXO understands the value that technology can bring for them, and they love it, right? So they love collaborating with you. Oftentimes, they also have more staff dedicated to technology. That's going to be great for you coming into a new role because you're going to be able to accelerate change with them. And when you start to have those types of wins, then you can also influence other people in the organization in terms of upping the frequency of collaboration with them as well. So this specific pitfall very much is about understanding your stakeholders, that power, the power dynamics and the political landscape, because going forward, you're going to have to co-lead a majority of your transformation in the organization with the other leaders. The degree on which you're going to be changing your organizations with technology is so big, you cannot do it alone. And so we really want you to understand where your stakeholders are. Okay, the last pitfall is the ambition distraction. And this one is about prioritizing your early successes, your quick wins, but doing it in a way where you're just picking what we call the low-hanging fruit and not scrutinizing what actually is a high-value early win, if you will. And so the risk associated with this, first and foremost, is that you might actually be taking actions in your first year, pursuing different types of initiatives that fail to impact key outcomes of the organization. They just don't go anywhere and they don't add to anything. Everybody's going to have eyes on your quick wins in the first year, so you need to be aware of this, because if they see this happening, you're going to be branded as that. You're going to be labeled as just being tactical, going after the things that are easy, and not understanding how technology actually drives the organization forward. That's what you're going to want to pursue in terms of going after higher quality early wins in the organization. This is very, very important, and we're just not seeing enough CIOs do it early on. Only half of our new CIOs are prioritizing quick wins, but when we look at our highly successful CIOs, they say quick wins were absolutely critical in their first year of success. And so let's look at some categories of quick wins that you would start to consider. Now, of course, there's going to be initially the ones where you're just going to stop the bleeding, if you will. If something's horribly broken, or there's a significant amount of risk being posed around something that you discovered, address it right away. That's going to be a really great early win. Guess where the insights from this are going to come from? Do you remember the audit that we did earlier? You're going to start to understand what's going to qualify as an early win. You want to support business priorities, and so this goes back to working with those stakeholders in the different functional units to meet their business outcomes. When you do that, you expand and better the brand of IT as being strategic in their eyes, as a strong partner. And then you can do that on a larger scale by supporting strategic imperatives. Now, these are bigger things, higher up in the organization, they might take longer, but the more that you can show that there's a line of sight between what your early win is doing and how that's impacting the strategic initiative at the highest level in the organization, again, it's better for your brand and moves you into being more of a strategic partner for those across the organization. You might discover that you need to manage your own culture within IT. When you get there, it could be in shambles. Your predecessor actually might have cultivated a culture that keeps people from collaborating or communicating or sharing information. You're going to need to understand that, and then you're going to need to manage that culture change so that you can be more so that your group can actually be more high performing in the organization. You might have to tackle some workforce issues. You might need to look at where your talent's coming from and where it should be coming from. We're doing a tremendous amount of work right now around skills redefinition and upskilling because of how much just jobs are changing. So you'll need to really look at, is my current talent mix and my talent sources meeting needs in the way that I need them to? Of course, you're going to have to repair some relationships. Coming in anew, again, your predecessor might have made a mess of things. or there might be someone that felt left out. Find out who those are and start to build those relationships going forward. Again, co-leadership is going to be your best friend going forward so that you can achieve change in your new role in scale. And then finally, if you can choose an early one that helps you build political capital with your stakeholders. Again, remember we talked about shifting that one strong opponent into a strong proponent. If you did that and you gave them all the credit on a project, that's going to build some political capital that you can cash in on later. Now, as you start to identify a set of quick wins, remember, we're not holding you to the first 100 days anymore. So you don't have to try to be getting all these things done in the first 90 or 100 days. Take your time over the first year, but that also puts you in the position that you can show the organization actually where you're taking it. You can start to show them a roadmap of change for your first year. You can help them understand what you're going to be doing early on, where you're going to be taking care of the most critical things right off the bat. You're going to be able to show them more across the midterm of your first year tenure. Where are you starting to go ahead and begin initiatives that have a longer runway? You're going to start things earlier on, but they're going to take more time to develop. You can show people exactly what it is that you're trying to get done, whether it's going after those talent things, or there might be a lot of political capital you need to build in a certain part of the organization. Share that transparently with the rest of the organization. And then, of course, you're going to let them know that you also have the strategic imperatives at the highest level prioritized in your plan going forward. When you do this, what you're actually doing is you're driving change from the IT group by helping people understand your vision for IT, where you're actually taking them in the organization, and where you're trying to actually embed the enterprise at the outcomes level. Show the way, don't show off is what one of our CIOs said. Those early quick wins that don't go anywhere, that's just showing off. Show them the way of how you're really going to change them. And when you do that, it builds trust and credibility over time. So think about those quick wins. They can be a pitfall, but they can also be a great way for the organization to understand where you're taking them. Okay, in my last few minutes, I'm going to want you to celebrate when you've overcome these pitfalls, but we're not quite ready to celebrate yet because I wanted to give you a bonus insight. So remember I told you we did a bunch of interviews with our CIOs. There was something super interesting that just kept coming up over and over. And for my brand new CIOs in the room, I want you to be aware of the honeymoon period. And so the honeymoon period, historically, has been a window of time that a new executive has when they go into their organization where they can try new things, they can implement change at a faster pace, they can move very, very quickly, and they're expected to be given a little bit of grace and a little bit of forgiveness. Well, guess what our executive and experienced CIOs said? They said that may not even exist anymore, depending on the job that you're going into. And if it does, it's likely much shorter and it's very nuanced. It might actually only be in parts of the organization or with certain stakeholders. So as you go into your role anew, really be aware of where you can flex and where you can take some chances, but know that you will be held accountable for them and you will not be forgiven for something that's just been a massive failure. The world simply doesn't have time for that anymore, and we thought this was a great insight that our CIOs gave us around be very careful with the honeymoon period. The old edict of move fast and break things, it doesn't fly anymore, right? Okay. Remember, this is about approaching pitfalls from a growth mindset perspective. You're leaning into ambiguity. You're leaning into the unknown and you're finding the room to then innovate because you're doing your due diligence. You're doing that audit. You're just mapping those stakeholders. You're taking the time to make sure that your quick wins actually connect with something that matters. And you're showing people all of that. It's a different way of going about it. But imagine if you're looking at your landscape and instead of it being dark and full of all these bottomless pit holes that you don't know what to do and you don't know how to get around, they're just beacons of opportunity for you. That's what you get as you start to build this muscle memory from leaning into what could be normally a tough pitfall. So I want you to be an observant beginner. Again, I want you to take the time to understand how the organization got to be how it is. I want you to understand that political landscape and those power dynamics in the organization and manage your folks accordingly. And I want you to pick great quality quick wins, and I want you to show the vision of where you're taking the organization over the course of time. If you'd like to, on the last day, I'm actually going deeper into quick wins in my session then. And so if that one piques your interest, please join me then. I want to thank you for letting me share these pitfalls with you. I've got one-on-one openings this week. If you want to go deeper into any of these, I can always do inquiry calls as well. And I've really enjoyed sharing this research because, like I said, it was right in my wheelhouse and I love this stuff. And so if you enjoyed my presentation today, please let me know that in the application. And have a great rest of the symposium. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much.